Hello friends and welcome to the first episode of Inspire. In this new world, we're going to go on a journey that pertains specifically to the art of building. It's been my biggest draw in the game of Minecraft for the better part of the past decade or so. And I've built a lot of things, most of them small and progressively better over the years. But I've never taken the time to sit down and really, truly hone in Minecraft. No pun intended. So within this new world, I want to go on an adventure with each and every one of you. We're going to learn together about all of the different techniques, all of the different bits and bobs and ways of thinking when it comes to becoming a better builder. As we make our way through this world and build it up slowly but surely, I don't want it to only be about the techniques and what blocks you're using and how you use them, but I also want it to be more focused on the art of it all. The way you think about it, the way you approach building, how you tie it to your memories and your experiences and to what you see, whether that's in the real world, whether that's other art, whether it's other creations in Minecraft. If you're anything like me, you've probably seen countless examples of builds over the years from people you know, people you may not know, people you may look up to. Things that wowed you, things that you thought to yourself, man, I could never do something like that. I've been that way for a while, and I think it's time to change that. So hopefully you can find some extra motivation in the fact that I'm not so much here to teach you as much as I am here right alongside you to learn as we go. So for the first time of hopefully a great many episodes, welcome to Inspire. So I'm gonna get working on some caving, getting some of the early stuff down. When you see me again, I will either have done something terribly wrong, or I'll be looking for a place to start settling down. Well, nothing has gone terribly wrong, nor have I found a place to settle down, but I have found right next to the surface this little skeleton spawner right here. And it looks like we're gonna get a name tag and a piece of horse armor. All we need now is a saddle and we can get going there as well. But I had to show you guys this because we are right next to the surface. You can see some of the surface light right there as well. And we're still right next to spawns. So wherever we get settled up around here, I think this is gonna be a great find. All right, we've made it out of the cave. I've got a shield, I've got a chest plate, and well, not much else, but you know what? That's all right. We got a lot of coal. I think this is just enough to get us started. And I wanted to show you guys a little bit of the area around us that we're working with. So I currently have my render distance up at 28 chunks, and we have some nice fog rolling in on the horizon as well. Now, there's not too much that I know about this world, other than that, for one, it is a large biomes world, and I think that'll serve our purposes very nicely. Alongside that, it is also one huge island, at least around here where we spawned in on the map. I did some very light vetting of some seeds just to make sure we found something that I think would give us a lot of room to operate and give us a pretty good baseline to go off of. So as you can see, we have this giant wide open kind of elevated plain right here, or I guess meadow. It's actually still just a plains biome apparently, but either way, it pretty much serves the same purpose. And we also have a bunch of plains around there. I believe this is what opens out to the ocean off in this distance, at least for this side of the island. We have a lot of these beaches kind of around the edges, and for the most part it's all plains and forest and flower forest on this island. I'm thinking it's probably a couple thousand blocks in each direction, so plenty of room to operate, plenty of room to work with. And it does, however, mean that when I need things like a desert or a swamp or you name whatever other biome here, we're gonna have to trek across the ocean to get there. The reason I wanted a world like this, especially a world with some large biomes and a nice wide open area to start with in the spawn of the world, is because the biggest thing that I feel I need to work on as a builder is scale. And not just scale, but also detail with scale as well. Something that I've done for years is just kind of build at player scale. And all that really means is, you know, builds that kind of fit the Minecraft character as a whole. You know, you're 2 blocks tall, so you kind of build something accordingly. You build something that you feel like you fit in nicely with. And that's something that I want to try and depart from. I want to learn how to build in a larger scale. I want to learn how to detail at a larger scale. And most of all, I want to learn how to start shading with blocks. So with all of that in mind, I was looking for a seed that I think would help us along that journey, give us a nice area to start out with. And I think we have a really good area here. Just by walking around and looking a little bit at everything. The actual world spawn, I think, was on that side of the river, just kind of over there. And at some point we can get a compass and we can figure out exactly where it is, mark it, and keep it safe. I feel like with where I'm at as a builder, I'm not in a position to be teaching anyone how to build anything. I think I've still got a lot of learning to do myself. And so the main premise of this series was not so much, hey, here's how we're gonna build this, but a little bit more so, hey, here's how other people are doing it, here's some inspiration, here's some other examples, and we're gonna try and figure this out together. Because at the end of the day, you guys aren't the only ones trying to learn some new techniques and how to build a little bit better, or just to see it all come together. But I'm also in that same boat. And so I think I've chosen a really good name for this series. Within the world of Inspire, that is quite literally what it's all about. We're going to go on this journey together. We're going to learn how to become better builders together, and hopefully by the end of it, should there be an end of it, or at the very least a month down the line, 3 months down the line, a year down the line, whatever it is, we can see a noticeable improvement in what we've done and how far we've made it. With that being said, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to find a spot that can be a little bit out of the way, somewhere around the spawn still, but somewhere where we can build a nice starter house, and that can kind of be our marker. You know, we started here, we'll put a little sign on it. This is how it began, and we can reference that at any point. I think that starter house is going to stay just as is, and we can always come back to that as kind of the beginning of this journey. Well, I took a little bit of a journey down the river. You can actually see where we were just in the fog up there in the distance where that tree is. And lo and behold, following the river, this started to appear in the distance. And you know what? That gave me a little bit of inspiration. This little, I don't even know, floating kind of jet out up on that hill. I think that right there might just serve as a perfect location for our little starter house, and that will give us the perfect opportunity to do some terraforming around it as well, to really exemplify, I hope that's the right word, what's going on right here, and make it look just that little bit better. But I think plopping something up on this hill right here in this weird kind of terrain formation and kind of leaning into the whole fantasy elements of it, I think could serve us really well and be a perfect little spot. Well, lo and behold, right next to where we are going to be building our house, there's a zombie dungeon right here too. Also really close to the surface. And hey, I guess I can't complain. We got some pumpkin seeds out of it too. I am out of food though, so I've done enough caving. We're up some more on some iron. There we go. So I can finally get some better stuff going. And now I think our biggest concern is going to be to start farming. Well, that's where we're set up for our house. And when we were over there, you may have noticed something in the background. And I came over here to investigate, and you are not going to believe this. We have this, maybe the wildest thing I have ever seen generate in this game. Just this little 1 block thick dirt patch. We've got 2 sheep, a big oak tree, about everything you would ever need right there, playing their own little version of Skyblock. That is unbelievable. That is honestly really cool. And I don't know how that kind of thing can still happen in modern day Minecraft. You used to see a lot more of that stuff, but I'm currently working on looking for a village. Aha! Ask and ye shall receive. That is not even like 10 seconds after I filmed that last little bit right over there by the tree. Looks like we chose the right direction to go, and this should get us started. We can also make sure that we keep the villagers safe here so that we can eventually start utilizing these guys for some of their trades and help us out just a little bit in that regard. Alright, I'll probably hang around here until nighttime rolls around, and then I can block some of these guys off inside of their buildings. Oh, this place is popping. Look at how many villagers there are. I can't believe it. There are so many of these guys sitting around here. If we can try and keep all of them safe, that'd be fantastic. Go ahead and block off these last 2, and I think we successfully saved everyone in the village. We're a hero. They're gonna owe us so much, and boy are they gonna work for it. So anyway, we could probably head back home. That was the only plot of land that they had here, so just carry. Oh wait, I did get a potato. I don't recall where I got that, unless it was from that field. There was no other fields, but you know what? We got everything we need, so we'll take it. Not too shabby. Back home we go. All right, we're back home now, or what will be home eventually before too long here. I've got a little bit of a farm going, got some animals corralled. Of course, there's still chickens we could get, but I'm not in a rush. A little bit of some crops going down here. It'll get us started as the sun begins to set once again. We've got a lot of material collecting to do to get this house done. I think the terraforming will come after. I'm not going to be too worried about that for now. Just going to go ahead and get the house in place, and then from there, we can start working through some terrain. First things first, though, we're going to need to find a mangrove forest, and we're going to need to find a desert. Well, I was in the middle of gathering things for the build, and I decided that I wanted some basalt. Well, I sure got it. I cannot believe what I am looking at for a nether spawn right now. I don't think in all of my days, not one single time, have I ever been done this dirty. Mojang, answer for this, please. I have no words. What am I supposed to do? I didn't even bring enough dirt for this. I can't even reach the nearest land. I didn't even think this was possible. You didn't think to, I don't know, spawn me in a cave nearby or just put me to the nearest surface? What is going on? And just look at this. Now I've got to get all the way back to my dirt bridge, and there are a million magma cubes. Thanks a lot. Worst seed I've ever seen. I want to go home now. Oh, we finally made it out of there. I'm getting rid of this portal, and I am moving it so far in any other direction that isn't right here. Also, for those of you guys wondering why I don't have any armor on, well, I do. Don't worry. I just got a fancy resource pack that turns it off so that you can see me a little bit better without... Oh, I'm over here. Without all of the armor. Yep, it's right here. I got all of this from all those ocean portals, ruined portals when I was in the ocean. Very good armor with protection. Very nice. Anyway, that's why there's no armor. Aha! Finally, our first little bit of building. It may not have seemed like too much for you guys, but it has been quite a while of gathering some resources and setting some things up here for us to really start to hammer this out. And before I got too far ahead of myself with the build here, I wanted to stop for a little bit and kind of check in with you guys and kind of walk you through a little bit of what's going on here, a little bit of what the idea is, and then some of the techniques that we're using, things that are new to me, and potentially new to you as well. You can hear a lot of villagers down there, just don't mind that. They are nice and well kept underground, and there is nothing shady or questionable about their living conditions underground. It's fine. Anyway, back to the build. So as I hinted at earlier, we found this little kind of natural jut out thing, a little floating piece of land, whatever we want to call it. And it gave me the idea. I kind of saw like an archway here, a little bit of that fantasy sort of terrain where, you know, it might not make a lot of sense in the real world, especially with a big old structure up on it. But I think with the right amount of terraforming, we can get this thing to look really cool. And especially if we start to tear out some of this terrain here. I set up a couple of these scaffolding towers for us to take a better look at it. And one of the things that I noticed while up on these two towers is first and foremost, this little hill right here that I have our stuff set up on temporarily, that's gotta go. But even more than that, I noticed when I was over with the house that I probably want to level out a lot of this terrain here. This hill kind of comes up right about where we're standing, and I think I want the view from kind of the river over there, and maybe even from that side of the river, you know, once the tree farms are gone. I think I want this to be a very nice view from over on that side, and I think we're going to have to do a whole lot of terrain work kind of building up to the house up on the hill right here, and this is just one side of it. Oh, the rain's here. Fortunately, I'm using the less intrusive rain from Vanilla Tweak, so hopefully it doesn't look too bad on the video bit, right? But regardless, this is only one side of it. Bit of a creeper farm down there. But I had mentioned that I wanted to stop before I got too far ahead of myself here, and that was to talk about a couple of the things that we're doing with the build. So the first thing that you guys might notice is a little bit of the shading that we have going on. So this is something that I've been talking a little bit about, something that I've never really done with blocks before, and something that I want to try to do more of. Up to this point, in pretty much all of my builds, the texturing has been very random and kind of chaotic. It's just grab a number of blocks and mix them all together and then call it good. And while that is better than just solid walls, I do think it's time to take that next step. And so that next step is starting to play around with lights and shadows, using blocks in sort of these chunks of blocks or these uninterrupted patches of blocks at a time. So as you can see, in some of the areas that we would consider darker areas, I'm using the smooth basalt as kind of our darker shaded block. And as we get a little bit lighter, we're transitioning into tough, and then cobblestone, finally regular stone, and then where there might be some lighter patches, places where the sun is really hitting a lot of the time, I even went ahead and threw some andesite in there. Now, we're definitely limited on our block selection this early in the game, so there was only so many things I would be willing to kind of play around with here. Deep slate definitely was not one of them. I did not feel like trying to gather a bunch of deep slate this early in the game, and even with the blocks we did get, especially those blast furnaces, I definitely bit off a little more than I could chew this early into a world, but hey, I do think it was pretty worth it. And the biggest thing with the shading here on the foundation of the house, and I think with most any build that you're gonna see this in, is that it's always better at a distance. I would say at a distance and probably at scale as well. So this right here, this is only the bottom layer of the house. This is just the foundation where we've kind of left off. Obviously up close, the closer you get and the more you zoom in on it, the weirder it can tend to look. However, when you get far enough away, such as from all the way back here, it all starts to blend together. You don't even realize that you're looking at a bunch of different blocks, and you get that shading effect to turn out really, really nicely. If you're just looking at it from this far away, and I can even zoom in and take this back just a little bit so it might be a little easier to see on the video, but you just see the lighting effect, right? Like if you look close enough, if you're really squinting, you can kind of see the different blocks, but at the end of the day, you're getting these different lights and these different shadows kind of happening in these areas where they should happen. And as we build the house up, and really any other build for that matter, we're gonna play around with this shading a lot. That is one of the most impactful things that we can do to improve our building from this point. And so it's something that I definitely want to incorporate, and I want to try to incorporate that in everything that we do here. The other big thing that you might notice is the use of blast furnaces as this sort of accent piece on top of our stone foundation all the way around the building. And yes, it's really expensive. Probably not worth it. Okay, it's pretty worth it. I mean, come on. It's a really good block when you're using the back of it right there. It works so nice to blend the lighter stone colors into kind of this little darker lip, this half block, this like half slab sort of detail. And you even get those little accent pieces right up in the corners of these blocks as well. Let me zoom in real far for you guys. These little pieces right here that can kind of look like almost these nails or other various accent pieces to the rest of the build that's going to go above. I thought it was the perfect block for this transition right here. And while it was extremely expensive, we do fortunately have iron farms at our disposal. And I got a quick little one right down there that's been helping me out with crafting all of these blast furnaces, because boy, is that an expensive recipe. And before we carry on with more of the build, I want to demonstrate what we're going to start to do with the walls. So the block palette that I wanted to go for here was a little bit like this. And again, we're going to be playing around with the shading a little bit. So for the majority of the walls of this house, we're going to be having this sandstone into birch and then sometimes stripped oak sort of palette. When it comes to the two woods, we're just going to use the stripped log versions. We're not going to mix in any planks. And as a little bit of a better example here, let me go ahead and add some of this so that you guys can sort of get the idea as to how that shading is going to work in various areas. We're going to end up having something that looks a little bit like this. In some of those darker areas on the house, you're going to see a little bit of the stripped oak wood right here, and hopefully you don't even really see it, and it kind of plays that trick on your eyes where it just looks like the different lights or shadows. As we get a little lighter, and for the base of the walls, we're going to be using this smooth sandstone. We'll use the regular sandstone and the stripped birch to kind of accent and help that transition fade. And I think this combination right here of blocks for the foundation, along with this combination right here for the walls, works really well off of one another. And finally, to wrap it all up, we are going to add this combination of colors at the very top to give it that nice little pop for the rooftop. I think all in all, this color palette, these 3 base color ranges, is going to work very, very well for this house. And I'm really excited to see some of the rest of it come together, especially given we've got more work to do after the house is complete. We got a whole weird cliff thing to terraform. So enough of me talking about it. It's time to get doing it. But first, I gotta sleep. Oh man, I think we have done it now. I just got a little glimpse of it. Let me get up on the platform right here. There it is. And I tell you what, I kind of knew what I wanted to go for here with this build. I kind of had the idea planned out and some of the techniques I wanted to use, but I think this turned out even better than I could have anticipated. And I think I have to say it, this is probably the best house that I have ever managed to build. I think a big part of it is some of the new techniques that we're using in there. There are some techniques I'm using in here as well that aren't necessarily new to me per se, but just mixing in some of the stuff I already knew with some of the new stuff that I'm trying out, and we wound up with something that looks really good. There are a couple instances of I'm missing a couple details. Like, I think I need some glass panes right there. I started to run out a little bit. And I think I put the campfires out in a panic up top and forgot that I kind of want the smoke to be up there. So I'm going to have to replace the campfires just a little bit, but that should be no problem. And walking around, getting some different views of the place, especially with how it's framed in your sight from multiple different angles, it being elevated up on this sort of hill that we're going to turn into a super fancy little terrain thing. You can see it from so far away in so many different areas, and it just comes into your view and just draws your eye to it so nicely. I think we've really managed to do something good. All of the time spent gathering some resources just for the first starter build, I think it was worth it. Going forward, it shouldn't have to take as long now that we're set up properly. But that all being said, I got some work to do, some windows that I still need to finish. I need to fix the campfires, and then the real fun starts. We got to start working on the terrain just a little bit, getting this all done up and customized, and then I think to cap it all off before we're done here, there is one final thing that I'm going to want to do. And maybe you've thought of it as well, but this spot right here to the right of the house, it looks like the perfect opportunity for a custom tree to kind of sprawl up and really accent the whole build as it all comes together. I think with a mix of kind of taking out some of this extra terrain, which will kind of draw your eye to this area better, especially the slope that it's on, get this all customized, get the shape looking a little better, and then plopping a tree right there. I think at that point, we will probably have set ourselves up with the perfect start to this world. But for now, I gotta fix up that house, and we gotta get going on the terrain. All right. And just like that, we have got a much better layout for us. And trust me, it only took like 5 minutes. All right, maybe it was closer to like 4 hours. But I mean, hey, look at how much better this place looks. And now with all of the adjustments out of the way for the terrain down here, it is very naked, very bare. We're gonna get to that, don't worry. But before we get to that, now it's time to shift our focus to where the house sits. And as you noticed, I haven't really touched it quite yet. This is where we're really gonna dive into kind of shaping it out a little bit better and giving it some of the detail that it deserves. Hey, future editing Cody here. I couldn't help but notice that I do this all the time at the end of talking clips. I just turn the camera, I just flick it in a random direction and start walking, as if future editing Cody doesn't have to sit here and deal with that, trying to cut a clip when I'm done talking, and then I just move the camera so it looks so jarring by the time I cut it. Anyway. Sorry you have to see that. I'm gonna do my best to not do that moving forward because wow, what a nightmare. Anyway, carry on. But first I wanted to mention something that I want to work on with building. We talked a little bit about the shading and some of the other techniques that we were mixing in there. Another one is sort of a picture frame technique, if you will. One of the more interesting things that I want to try comes from my favorite builder, B-Dubs, who is also my biggest inspiration. Somebody I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. And that technique is effectively looking at an area as if it were a picture. Whether that's a real picture or a drawing or any of the sort, you just kind of take a view and you turn it into a bit of a picture frame, and then you figure out how you want to detail it from there. So that can include things like sight lines, that can include things like depth, how close or far details are, how things interact with each other, what sort of things draw your eyes, what sort of things you don't really notice until you get closer, some things you notice better at a distance, all of that sort of stuff. And that's something that I definitely want to play around with in this world. And I think we'll see a lot more of it as we dive further into the world with some more of our projects later on. But I do think, given we have our house up on this little hill right here and we're about to shape it up nicely, we have a really good opportunity to play with it a little bit. The technique. Play with the technique a little bit. So here's kind of what I'm thinking with it. We know we want to put a tree on the other side of the house up on the elevated ridge right here. And as a part of that detail, we're going to extend this part of the stone out a little bit further. It's not going to come down and be an outward slope on this. It's not even going to all connect to the ground. Rather, it's going to come out a little bit and it's going to still have this sort of curve to it where the edges of it are definitely floating over the surface in a more fantasy way that doesn't really make a lot of sense in the real world. But that's not what we're going for here. We're going for something that looks cool, is attention grabbing, and gives you that sort of fantasy element. Whimsical even. So after we have that cliffside done, the tree will be the next thing. That tree will be a little bit bigger than the house. It's not something that I've built yet, but we'll figure it out as we go. We'll want the scale to feel good alongside the house, which itself is a larger scale than anything I usually build. So given we have the house up there and the tree right next to it, we have the fancy cliff it's going to be sitting on. I figure the pathway is going to wind down the hill a little bit and probably circle back around at some point down into this area, and then we can have it continue on that way, as well as maybe eventually do something out in that direction. But my main focus is going to be to bring that path down around here, have it swoosh across and head down that direction, kind of following the river right here. Hey, next day Cody here. I'm a liar. I lied to your face. We're not going to have the pathway go down there next to the river. That's a little silly. Why would we have the path run along the river on this side when not that long ago I was just talking about the view from the other side of the water? Not only that, but that's where I want to continue to do more of our building in the future, is on that side rather than where this normal forest is. So of course, it only makes sense that the pathway from the front door will wind itself down and eventually cross the water and then disappear off in that direction, and we can kind of detail everything up from there. So instead of all of the stuff that I just cut out there from last night when I was rambling on and on about this side of the river, nay, we're going to remove this big group of mangrove trees, which will also be very good for the mangrove stock. And I think in the future, we have a little bit of river terraforming to do, because as you can see from here, the view of the river is phenomenal. I do really like how wide the river is here. This is perfect, and you don't often get a river that looks this good in vanilla Minecraft. That being said, as it makes its turn right here, it narrows quite a bit into that traditional Minecraft wishy-washy, kind of really thin, weird-looking river that almost at times looks more like a creek than anything, which of course we don't want here. Now, I think all of the terraforming is going to be done on that side of the river. Once the trees are gone, it's kind of easier to visualize, but I think all of the water expansion, it'll be dug into that side rather than this side, especially because I just spent so much yesterday working on terraforming all of this down. I would hate to get rid of a bunch of it. But that's neither here nor there. The water and any potential bridge, that's not for now, that's for later. For right now, we have to detail this cliffside, get that looking good, and then we can cap it all off with our tree. And as I did with part of the house, I'm gonna show you guys a little bit of what I'm thinking of. And this is something that I have to do better about in previous series and YouTube videos. That's something I didn't do too well, is kind of lay out what we're gonna do ahead of time. And so we're gonna take right here a very, very classic terraforming palette, at least when it comes to exposed stone surfaces, things like cliff sides and mountains and overhangs and underhangs and all of the hangs. We have all of our different lighting bits right here, or at least we're going to play around with lighting. I should say we have all of our different stone bits that can kind of provide different lighting levels based on how you're looking at it. So of course, in our brightest side, we have things like andesite, which will go with the regular stone. I felt like that was kind of self-explanatory, so I didn't need to include it. But as we get a little bit darker, cobblestone, mossy cobblestone, tuff, and deep slate. I don't currently have regular silk touch deep slate. We'll make sure to get some. So I just put that cobbled deep slate there for reference, but that'll kind of give us our palette here that we're going to be using. And instead of doing what I would normally do in my builds, which is just use a random combination of maybe these first 3 blocks and call it a day, we're going to keep playing around with the lighting a little bit. And so you're going to start to see a lot more of the deep slate in some of these naturally shaded areas where we can kind of boost that shadow, really kind of hammer home that effect. And then in certain areas where the sun might shine a little bit brighter, you'll see it lighten all the way up into things like andesite, and of course the smooth stone will be there as well. Beyond the blocks that we're using, the most important thing is going to be the actual shape of this formation itself. And I think we have a little bit of work ahead of us to get it just right. I may need to do a lot of work down the side as well just to get it to a good spot. And something that I have been thinking about but not coming to any conclusions for is what we do underneath this overhang. At the current moment in time, there's not much down here. There is this big ravine kind of cave weird thing going on right here in the ground, which I'll probably just cover up if anything. I don't think it's really doing us much good right here. And when it's not lit up, it's just a mob farm underneath. I have considered things like water, you know, maybe a little pond down here or something, but I figured it would just be kind of shadowed. It would be so dark under there with the overhang kind of, you know, being right above it. I considered perhaps taking the tree that we build and using the roots of it, having them kind of shoot through the terrain on the bottom maybe, and have them do something cool. I'm not exactly sure. I feel like I'm on the precipice of a couple potentially good ideas, but nothing's really clicking. So I think for now, I'm not going to worry about what goes underneath. And maybe I'll just cut a little bit of it out just to give it some more spacing. But I think we'll worry about the formation itself, and I'll let all of you guys give me some ideas for what we can do underneath. Okay, I think I've talked your ear off enough. Let's see what we can do here. Well, if you're still here at this point, I want to mention that this is quite different from anything I have really tried before, and it has been a really, really long time in the works. I've spent countless hours on this. I've completely reshuffled my whole schedule to really put my all into this project, into this world, into this idea to really see it come to light. No pun intended. So by all means, if you're enjoying the video, if you've made it this far, please consider subscribing to the channel. It lets me know that you want more of this. Shoot, tell me in the comments if you like it. Tell me if you hate it. Tell me what I did good, what I did wrong. And I'm really excited to get more of this out there. I hope you guys are as well. But I just needed to throw that out there for a little bit, if I could speak. The sun's setting. It's getting dangerous. I gotta go. Yep. You know what? That is the angle right there. That is exactly what I was looking for. So, of course, up close, and the closer you get, it's not quite the same. But at a distance, and especially if you can get a little bit of that fog rolling in, what we have just created is unlike anything I've ever been able to manage before. And I choose this area over here, this big wide open field on this side of the river, very specifically. That's because this is where I eventually want your eyes to be focused from, the direction, the approach, I guess. This is going to be where we continue to work out the world, at least in the near future. And so as the road approaches from this side, this is really going to be the angle you have, minus this big mangrove swamp. It's like 18 trees in like 2 chunks. It's crazy. Anyway, don't mind that. If you can just cancel that out of your vision for a second. The house up on the hill, we've terraformed the little cliffside right here. I love the angle we have. Now, it's not perfect, and there are instances where I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, oh, I could do this differently, I could do that differently, you know, I could do this better, maybe I didn't do too good there. But at the end of the day, I mentioned it earlier, I think, I want this build to really represent where I am as a builder right now, because this is going to be our baseline. This is going to be our milestone, you know. I'm going to come back in a week, I'm going to come back in a month, we're going to look back on this in a year, whatever the case is, and we're going to say, okay, you know, this is where I was as a builder. This was what I could manage. This was my best, you know, at this current point in time. This was the best thing that I have ever put out up to this point. And so we're using that kind of as a reference. So I can't keep going back and making tiny little changes and adjusting it and spending hours and hours trying to perfect it. I think we have it to a good point. I think I'm happy with it. And while I was working on it, while I was doing the terraforming and kind of taking a step back, looking at it from different angles and really just pondering what we're building and how we can really further that idea that we want it to turn into sort of a picture, right? A work of art. You are looking at a framed image on the wall, or you stumbled across, you know, a still frame image, a screenshot on Reddit, or whatever the case is, right? The idea that we want this to be, you know, from further back, ideally, this sort of snapshot in time where it's like an art piece, right? And so I think the idea to have the tree on the far edge of this overhang was a little ambitious, and I think we're going to scratch that. I think we're going to cancel that, and that makes me a liar yet again. However, it's okay. It'll be worth it, because I do think putting a tree up on this hill will be really nice, and we could even play around with the idea of putting a tree a little closer to the house, maybe a little bit more in the background. We could do something a little further back from where the house sits compared to where we stand right now. Something a little further back, nice and big, so that it accents the side of the house right there. And I think that, in combination with the detail that draws your eye, right? The cliff that's kind of hanging over a lot of nothing right here. I think that would be the perfect way to accent what we've built here. All of that being said, I think I've gotten ahead of myself just a little bit with all of this talk of building a tree and trying to get that done as well. I have poured so many hours into this episode already, and if I keep going, it is going to wind up over an hour long. So I'm just going to show you guys what we did right here and talk a little bit about this shading technique, just like we did with the house. This is a little bit of using it in the terraforming, and I mentioned this a second ago, but up close, it's not really, you know, it's not something to look at. It's not really something to behold, but it's not supposed to be, right? The idea here is that we're building on a larger scale and with more of a focus from far away. I've always built on smaller scales. I've always built with a focus of it has to look good close up, but I've never done the inverse of that. I've never taken a step back and really just taken that opposite approach, that larger scale, more zoomed out, the sight lines of it, right? The art of it, the shading, all of that sort of stuff that I've been mentioning throughout the episode. So we took all of these different blocks from cobbled deep slate to regular deep slate, tough, mossy cobble, stone, and even andesite in some highlights right there. And a combination of sort of terraforming the shape, getting that curve just right, and then mixing in the dirt at the lip of it, and on the slopes right here, just a little bit of dirt where it feels like grass might be able to grow. If it's too steep, it wouldn't really make sense for grass or moss or whatever might be growing up there to really show. And so I was kind of selective with that as well. I mixed in some stone along the side. And best of all, I even did it on both sides as well. So over here, this was all one big hill. This took forever to kind of flatten out and grass over and everything. And it looks really bad, but bear with me. We'll get there. We'll get there. And so here's how it looks on the other side. We have this extra little lip. We have this long slope that kind of leads up to it. It's not perfect. It's, you know, it sticks out a little bit because we don't have the extra details. We don't have any trees or grass details or bushes or anything like that, but we will, all in due time. Trust the process. And for this first step of the process, I think we've got something that has turned out pretty good, all things considered. I've never had to do anything like this terraforming wise, so from this side especially, it's not ideal. I like it better from the other side, and this is one of those imperfection things. Like, there's no such thing as perfection at the end of the day, but I'm always sitting here trying to change up little things, trying to find where I can improve, and that cycle can definitely spiral out of control if you're not careful. And so I think a part of this world, a part of this project will be sort of learning for myself as well when is a good time to continue improving, and when are times to just kind of take a step back and say, you know what, I did good. I did better than what I could have done a week ago, a month ago, a year ago, whatever the case. This is objectively better than most things I've done, and so that's a good starting point to continue to improve on from there, but it doesn't always have to be improving on the same exact thing by redoing it over and over and over. I think we've come a long way in this first episode. I think I have definitely one-upped myself as a builder, and that's kind of what I set out to do. We played around with a little bit of the shading technique, we played around with a larger scale, and the best part is the scale can only go up from here, because I think we could do a lot better on a little bit of a bigger scale as well, and the possibilities are really endless. And speaking of the endless possibilities, I'm gonna lay down the gauntlet for myself. Over the course of this world and whatever we get up to, I want to try and become one of the better builders in Minecraft. I think I'm far from it. I think I've got a lot to learn, but I think I can do it. So stick around. Let's see how far we can go. So if you enjoyed the episode, if you're still here after all this time, it means the world. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like or, dislike if you didn't like the video. It's okay. You're allowed to hate it. Okay, you can dislike it. That's fine. Okay, but let me know. Either way, it helps. It tells me what I'm doing. Drop a comment down below, tell me what you liked, what you didn't like, anything you'd like to see, anything like that. All of the feedback helps, it goes a long way. Of course, in the first episode of something like this, it definitely means a lot too, so I know where to go from here. I know what's good and what isn't good, and any feedback that we could possibly have. Also, in that vein of thought, if you did like this, if you enjoyed it, if you want to see more of this, by all means, the best thing you can do, the best way that you can support this, is just tell a friend. Send this video to a friend, someone you know who plays Minecraft, someone you kind of know who plays Minecraft, I don't know, somebody who you just play on a server with. Send it to someone, hopefully they'll like it, and hey, you've done more than I could possibly ask. Either way, with all that rambling out of the way, huge shout out to everyone who supports the content on Patreon. Mostly, it's for stream. I've been a streamer for almost 5 years. If you're new here, I'm just trying to figure out the YouTube thing now, but we'll get there someday. And as always, shout out to everyone who's supporting on Patreon. I do plan to do some cool stuff on this world with that. More than just end of video, title screen, whatever names on the screen. We'll do something cooler. We'll work on it, but we gotta get a little further in the world, all right? That covers it, though. I'm happy with where we are. We gotta end it there. Otherwise, I'm gonna keep going for like another 40 minutes in this video, and we gotta cut it off there. All right, goodbye. See you next time. Hopefully this next one doesn't take so long. We'll be back. We'll build something cool. All right, goodbye. Have fun. Goodbye. See you later.